Disability inclusion is a shared responsibility. This video will provide an overview of the various responsibilities for each stakeholder in the residency accommodation process. Once match day is complete, it's time to start planning for the transition to residency. Whose responsibility is it to make sure that the environment is accessible and inclusive of learners with disabilities? The answer is that it's a shared responsibility between the trainee, the institution, and the training program. So, how does the accommodation process work, and who holds the responsibility of ensuring equal access for the learner? Certain elements in the process are the responsibility of the institution. Indeed, there should be an identified office for managing resident accommodation requests. A good facilitator of access and inclusion knows where to refer a resident. Do you know where to refer trainees? This role is often given to one of the following offices: Disability Management Services, Human Resources, ADA Office, GME Office. Once you identify the proper office, all referrals should go through them. So you might be wondering, what is the learner's role in this process? Similar to the process in medical school, disability disclosure must originate from the learner. Programs do not diagnose or assume disability or assume the need for accommodation. To request accommodations in residency, learners must disclose a disability and submit a formal request for accommodations, offer documentation substantiating the disability, level of impairment, and the barriers to accessing residency. Finally, the learners must work with the program to identify reasonable accommodations. For the learner's part, timely disclosure of a disability allows the program adequate time to implement accommodations. This is especially critical for any scheduling adjustments. If you are a trainee and know what is needed for support, you can help inform the process by sharing what has worked for you in the past.
These accommodations were really instrumental in my success in medical school.
Sharing this information is really helpful, especially for programs that have not managed accommodations in the past. The institution shares in the responsibility of making sure that training programs are accessible and inclusive to learners with disabilities. The Accreditation Council for Graduate Medical Education requires programs to maintain a disability policy. That policy should include clear messaging about how to request accommodation. In addition to communicating the disability-related processes via the disability policy, information about how to disclose disability and request accommodation should be shared on the program's website and in orientation materials. Incoming residents should also receive information about disability disclosure as part of their welcome letter following the match. Programs should consider adding these messages as part of the interview or recruiting process to welcome residents with disabilities and let them know how to request accommodations. Finally, it is an ACGME program requirement that sponsoring institutions provide residents with accommodations in line with the disability policy. Institutions have a clear responsibility to inform trainees about how they can request the accommodations they need to fully access the program. Transparency in this process also helps to promote a more inclusive and respectful environment where learners with disabilities feel welcomed and valued. So, what role does the program director play in ensuring learners have disability access and feel welcome in the program? A big one. The program director sets the stage and helps create an environment where people are willing to disclose their disability early in the training process, without fear of stigma or bias. One mechanism for facilitating this type of environment is the manner in which the program communicates their commitment to disability inclusion to applicants and incoming residents. Similar to the institutional approaches, information about the disability policy should be included on the program website, in the invitation to interview, and in the welcome letter post-match. And the messaging should be positive, welcoming, and encouraging, sending the message, "We value your diverse contribution to medicine," inviting learners to disclose any needs for accommodations as soon as the contract is signed. The program director should also be prepared to manage stigma and misperception about accommodations from attendings and other residents. Indeed, disability does not equal inability. Each member of the team contributes in an equally important manner. One concern that is often expressed is concern about fairness. When a learner has an accommodation, it may be perceived as causing inequity in work or coverage for other residents. Indeed, all residents must complete the same milestones and hours, but disabled residents may achieve these differently. Meeting hours, for example, over a few additional weekend days versus a 24-hour shift. One way to reduce assumption and stereotype is by sharing stories of successful physicians with disabilities and why these physicians are important to healthcare. Another way to build an inclusive environment is to model language and behavior that respects the autonomy and ability of people with disabilities. The process of disclosing a disability, requesting accommodations, and implementing accommodations can feel overwhelming, like trying to navigate your way out of a forest. However, successfully navigating this process is a team effort. Everyone, including the resident, the institution, and the program, share responsibility for equal access. When every member of the team work together, the process can be supportive and productive. GME stakeholders can find additional resources at www.docswithdisabilities.org/DIGME.